All right, there we go. Sorry about the technical difficulties, everyone. If you're joining us, my name is Steven Hernandez from the Paradox Kingdom YouTube channel and podcast. Um, Hopefully, you're able to join in. I know there was a few minutes delay. I apologize about that, but but we're gonna get into it. This is the first time going live, and I'm excited about what God is doing, and I'm excited about our guest today and the topic that we're going to be talking about: apologetics, the church, and what's missing and what can we do about it. Um, so I'll talk a little bit, and then I'm going to invite Pastor Geno because I love and we'll talk about that too. Why I even have him on here, and it's honestly an honor for me to have him as the first guest. But so for those who don't know, um, I have a YouTube channel, and actually, what I created it for was to help Christians learn how to read and interpret the Bible. I've been an adjunct professor since 2014, so I teach hermeneutics and other classes, systematic theology, and things like that. So I created a YouTube channel because I wanted to help Christians learn how to read, interpret the Bible. But many of the people that like to comment and actually watch my videos are atheists and Muslims and people who are not Christians. And I've always loved apologetics just because it's something important. And I'll share a little bit about how I got into it. But I think it's a very important topic that not many Christians are talking about. The church is not talking about. And so that's kind of how we got to where we're at today, and kind of how I got to where I'm at in my YouTube channel. It's still small, it's still growing. What I understand is that the YouTube game is the long game. It's not about going viral, but it's about building a community and just kind of growing and sharing your journey along with other people. But without further ado, I'm going to invite Pastor Geno. Let me go ahead and throw him in here. There he is. How you
Hey,
doing?
great, great. How about you, sir?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Now that the stream is going, I'm doing doing a lot better.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you want, you can introduce yourself and then also let me know what's the PG-13 about. I know we're gonna keep it, PG-13, but you can let us know what that's about, where you're at, and then we'll kind of just have that conversation and we'll get into it from there.
Absolutely. Well, good evening, everyone. And first, thank you, Stephen, for having me on the show. It's always a pleasure and a privilege to be able to connect with other believers, like-minded, and even those that are not believers, that aren't like-minded of the faith. It's always good to be able to share the gospel in a healthy way. Geno Gardner, originally from Chicago, Illinois, the west side of Chicago, born and raised, and a pew baby, a church baby. My mother raised me, and also the streets got a little touch on me as well. And we had a interesting battle throughout life. However, the gospel really became a true staple and pillar in my life in 2000. So from that point forward, I was a disciple of Christ, and my journey with Him began to grow. So I have a lot to me. I am retired Army as well. Did 22 years United States Army, honorably served 6 different countries, one
Wow.
deployment to Iraq, and my wife and I both deployed to Iraq. So combat veteran, and just many different unique stories to tell. So, but thank you once again, my friend Stephen,
Yeah.
just for the first having me, man.
Yeah, definitely appreciate your service as well. I don't know how many people tell you, and maybe you hear it a lot, maybe you don't hear it enough, but yeah, we really do appreciate that. Is a sacrifice. That's one of the biggest sacrifices people can do, to give up your life, your family, and to serve, so appreciate that.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Absolute, absolute. It's an honor to serve, man. Since I was 18 years old.
Amen. Amen. You don't look too much older than that. I know
I
you are,
appreciate
but
that.
you look good. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
God is good.
Amen. Amen. All right. So yeah, so I appreciate you. And so for those who don't know, um and well, I guess, how do you know Fanatic? Is it just kind of you just seen his stuff, you grew up listening to him? Because that's really kind of how I got to know you, I think, on here a little bit.
Yep, from the Fanatic Post. So I grew up. I am also a former Christian hip hop artist. So when
That's what I want to hear. I thought there was something in there too.
yep, absolutely. I started Christian hip hop in 2000 when I fully committed my life to Christ. I did secular hip hop all through high school. recording, writing, all kind of stuff, performing, and then got saved in 2000 when I joined the military. And from that point forward, I started doing gospel. I didn't know it was such a thing, but my pastor was cool with it in 2000. And so I started writing, gospel rhymes. And the first group that really compelled to me was none other than the Cross Movement. And so
Nice.
Fanatic being a part of that, of course, with the rest of the crew. So that's how I kind of got connected to Fanatic.
Very cool. And then before we continue with that, what does PG-13 mean?
PG, so Pastor Geno, and then Christ in the 12 is 13. So
Nice, nice.
that's something that I was preaching one Sunday, and it just dropped on me again. I'm a lyricist, I'm a hip hop guy, and so I was preaching one Sunday, and that PG-13, I just kind of threw it out there in the message, and then I'm like, yo, I'm gonna keep that. I'm gonna hold on to that one.
Nice, nice. I love it. Love it. Yeah. So a similar background for me too. I started battle rapping when I was 14 and kind of did the same thing. I backslid. Well, I got saved when I was 18, backslid for 2 years, and then rededicated my life when I was 20 and been following God ever since. So, so yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of similarities on that as well. So that's probably why we kind of love apologetics, right? Yeah.
It's like the urban connection, man. When you get saved and you had an urban context, it's something about that even the truth. Like, I don't know if you follow the truth, Christian hip hop.
Yeah.
He's one of my forefathers in the faith and Christian hip hop is concerned. And
Yeah, absolutely.
that is his big deal. He's strongly pinching on that apologetics vein. So you'll see a lot of that on social now as well. I have people reaching out as far as the video is concerned. Am I able to just I don't see it on your page, but am I able to just share the link from YouTube?
Yes. Yeah. That'll be great. Again, this is my first time, so there's certain things.
I got you.
Yeah. Let's see.
Let me see if I can grab it.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, if you do that, I appreciate that.
Yeah. I'll see if I can grab it while I'm listening to you, so I don't want to mess it up. I mean, they hitting me up left and right. They're like, "What's going on? What we got going on?" I said, "Don't worry about it, y'all. We'll figure it out."
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll kind of tell the backstory. So while you do that, so for those who don't know, so we have a common friend on Facebook, which is Fanatic. He was a Christian rapper for many years, did a lot of things. And then he deconstructed, as he says, he is no longer a Christian. And so on there, every now and then, I'll comment on some of his posts, or he'll comment on some of mine. And then also I've been on his podcast 3 times actually. So we had a lot of good conversations. And so I know in one time in particular, this is one of the times where I was commenting on him, and I had like several other people on there going against me. He has a lot of people that follow him that are non-believers. And I was just like kind of getting frustrated. I was like, man, like it just felt like people weren't even hearing what I'm saying or my heart. They were just kind of attacking. And I was just kind of getting frustrated. And I remember you had responded to the same post, but you did it with such love and such truth that I was like, man, I love the way he did it. Cause that's the approach that I kind of, for the most part I am, but there was that one day I was getting like frustrated, and I was like, man, and I don't know exactly what it was, but I know. And I was like, man, it just kind of gave me that hope. Like, yes, Lord, there's more Christians out there that are loving like Christ. You know what I mean? And that's important. That's very important. And so from there, I was like, man, I would love to connect with Pastor Geno. I would love to see just kind of chop it up and then talk about the church. And then even just from our little small conversation, you were talking about financial literacy in the church as well, which is absolutely important. We'll probably talk about that on another post, but I was like, you know what? I would love to have you on. Let's talk about apologetics. And you were actually, I think you were talking about maybe it was the Apologetics Bible or something you were reading, or a book. And I was like, yeah, we need to talk about that.
It might have been that Apologetics study Bible that I've had for several years, man. I've had that for eons, but inspired by one of my forefathers in the apologetic faith, Norman Geisler. That was somebody when I first started studying apologetics in like 2005. So I'm kind of, man, when I ran up on one of his books, I was in a space where I'm like, I had a lot of questions myself. I was new to the faith in discipleship, but I still had some secularism that I was wrestling with. And so I looked at, read one of his books, and he has a million of them. I forget which one it was. but it was so simple, and it was about, I think, creation or something, and how did we get here. And I'm like, yo, this dude is crazy. So I started reading the whole book, and I started like inquiring more about Norman, and then said, so I've just been, from that point forward, apologetics has always been a part of my language. And
Hmm.
officially studied it a couple years ago, and I have a master's in apologetics with an emphasis of
Oh,
cultural
nice.
engagement. Yeah. But my entire ministry has been like kind of just self-taught,
Hmm.
self-study kind of thing, just to get connected to, some of these things that are controversial to the faith.
Absolutely. And so along that, and I think you kind of answered it, but was there a moment that you remember when apologetics became essential and not just optional? Like, was there a moment that you kind of were maybe people coming up to you with questions, or was there a moment or something that happened where you're like, this is not just something that those apologists do it. This is something that we need. This is kind of our culture, kind of like you're talking about.
Man, that's a great question. And I would honestly say that's now. I
Mm,
just recently, when I was actually maybe about 3 years ago, I honestly said, I'm in Birmingham now. I live in, excuse me, Birmingham, Alabama, and I just saw the state of the culture, and I'm like, yo, all these years of training and studying, I said it's for now, and I just started deploying my church into this deep dive into discipleship, evangelism, and apologetics. That is our primary focus. That's
mm,
all we focus on is DEA, because those three elements is it embodies scripture. It embodies our journey. It embodies how we grow and connect, discipling them, evangelizing them, and defending the faith against those that are, contrary to or problematic to the Christian growth. So
yeah.
we focus on those three. And it's probably about 3 or 4 years ago when I saw it here in the city that I really need to deploy these tools.
Hmm. That's amazing. Um, what does the discipleship look like for you at your church? I'm just curious because I
Yeah.
know a lot of people have different ideas of it, but it sounds like you're not just talking about it on Sunday, but you're obviously evangelizing, which is rare. And I have some statistics I want to talk about too. But yeah, what does that look like for you?
Man, it's day to day. It's lifelong journey, right? Discipleship, and I share my stories of personal impact of men to this day across my journeys that I still stay connected with and share the faith and help them build and stay connected to Christ. When I first got saved, and when I lived in Texas, I lived in Texas, Tennessee, Chicago, now here in Birmingham,
What part of Texas?
Killeen, Fort Hood, Texas.
Oh, okay, yeah, because you were
Yeah.
in service. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because I'm in the Austin area right now. I'm from
Oh,
Houston originally, but yeah,
yeah. Oh man, I
yeah,
know, man. Pflugerville,
yep, yep.
all the outskirts. What's the other one, man? But we
There's
love
Round
all
Rock, Pflugerville,
Round Rock.
Georgetown.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it. And that time in Texas really helped me deploy real life, real world discipleship, going to people's houses, sharing the
Mm,
gospel, going to people's parking lots, apartment complexes in the hood, just sharing the gospel raw and rugged. I did that for several years. I mean, that was a part of my construct. And so being able to study it and learn it now you can put a real world element from that urban connection into an actual formal study, and I bleed and embed the two. I take the practical and apply the spiritual, and we all walk through that text in the real world. And I give them stories of how I was discipled and how I've discipled men and how I've stayed connected. And from that point,
mm.
man, it's all ears, but it's new language to some people, to be honest with
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, that's what's up. I was a youth pastor for several years in Oakland, and some of the best discipleship was like you're talking about life on life. And I always tell people, um, that's how you do discipleship. It's like a apprenticeship. I had a student that would always hang around me, and I was like, he's like, "Well, what are you gonna do today?" I was like, "I just need to go buy some groceries." Like, "Can I come?" I was like, "If you want to." Like, this is boring, college stuff, but if you want to, he's like, "Yeah." When I would go to restaurants, he would see how I would treat waiters and would I treat them as people, or if I was cut off, how did I treat those people who were cutting me off? Was I flipping the finger? What was I doing? That's all discipleship, showing them this is how you interact with the world. Even if they don't love us, they don't treat us right. This is how we do it. It's like you said, it's life on life. So yeah, no, that's definitely great. Um, so let's see. So the next thing I'm thinking is, why do you think apologetics is neglected in the modern church? Why do you think people stray away from it? Um, and then obviously we're going to talk about what we can do about it. And you're a living testament of what we can do about it, right? We'll get to that later. But why do you think people stay away from apologetics?
And honestly, I think it's the culture that really has drowned out and swallowed out the soundness of the gospel. And I think that if the culture becomes the primary focus of our preaching, and it's not that we don't embed ourselves and we, we connect to the culture to some degree because Christ had to embed himself. He had to get connected. But I think that some of our language has become more, let's please the crowd. Let's
Mm,
please the masses versus giving them the truth. Let's just shade it off, water it down, whatever that looks like. And apologetics wards against that. It buffers up against that, and it holds the gospel to the utmost authority. It is the most
yeah.
authoritative book. And I honestly see that now. I see that now, and it's definitely needed. But I think that a lot of people don't know how to challenge the spiritual and the intellect. They war against that intellectual connectivity to people and being in their world and being accepted versus, hey, here is the unadulterated truth of the gospel, and let's measure up to it. We're not
Mm,
coming down to you. You know what I mean? I think that people just wrestle with that challenge. And then it's foreign language to a lot of pastors, even though they may be theologically studied. A lot of them, it's not really something that they really accept as a day-to-day challenge, if I could say it like
yeah,
that.
absolutely. Absolutely. I'm just reading a comment. A war against intellect. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. No,
Yep.
that's definitely true.
Yep.
Um, so there's a I'm gonna see if I can find a quote real quick. But so I'm reading this book right now from his name is Eric Hernandez. It's called The Lazy Approach to Evangelism. I think we had talked a little bit about
We
it.
did. We did.
Yeah, and
You
so
showed it to me.
oh, okay, cool, cool. Yeah. He actually, I don't know him, but he's an apologist. Same last name, and he's Mexican too, but we don't know each other. But I follow him on YouTube and Facebook and things like that. But he has a quote in here, and it's talking about in Matthew 5, where it says, that we're the light of the world, we're a city on a hill, we're the salt of the earth. And he has a passage in here where he's talking about that, where um he says, what Jesus is telling the disciples, if the salt loses its flavor, how can it be made salty again? There's no point for it except to be thrown out and trampled on man. And he says, our job, as salt, it's to give flavor, but it's also a preservative, especially in the ancient times. He says, but if the salt is not preserving the meat, then at some point we got to look and say, what's wrong with the salt? And what he's saying is that at some point we can't keep blaming the world that it's not being preserved, that it's going, it's going wayward, it's messed up, it's being destroyed. At some point we got to look at the salt and say, what are we doing? Or what are we not doing? You know what I mean?
Right.
And
Agreed.
we have to think about it. What are we doing as a church that we're not preserving the world anymore? We're
Mm,
not
mm,
we're not
mm,
being salt. We're
mhm,
not doing our job.
mhm.
And so that's another thing that kind of like, even though I know apologetics is important, it just kind of reminded me like, man, it really is important,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. We got to preserve the faith, the life, long live the church, and it only lives through us, right? We are the mechanism God gave, breathed into, left his spirit for to continue on this great work, be an extension of his goodness. And we have to be able to, led by Holy Spirit, be able to engage and to deliver God's message in his integrity. His integrity is everything. It echoes who he is. It bleeds who he is. And so we have to be ready and willing to do those things that he said, greater works you shall be and will be an extension of who I am. This work has to continue, man. Who does it continue through?
Yeah.
And without compromise, it has to be without compromise. It must continue.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. It has to be without compromise, for sure. Mythos boy, we'll get back to you. Continue in the comments. I appreciate you hopping on. Um, so these are some stats that I wanted to read, and then we'll kind of talk about them. But it says 5 to 10% frequent of Christians share their faith, and 95% never led anyone to Christ. Like that's insane. But I think that's so only 5% of people in the church, and I think this was in the US, have ever led someone to Christ,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm. Yep.
Um, a recent activity was 61% of churchgoers have not shared their faith to anyone in the past 6 months. And then this one was another one that I thought was very interesting. It says the percentage of Christians who believe that it's their personal responsibility to share their faith dropped from 89% in 1993 to 64% into 2018. So it's probably different from now, but and I see that as true, right? I see more and more Christians that are saying that's the evangelist job, that's the pastor's job, that's the extrovert's job, that's the this job, instead of saying, the Great Commission in Matthew 20, 28:18 to the 20, that's for everyone, right? That's not for the varsity, that's for the junior varsity, that's for everyone. There's no junior varsity spirit. It's for all of us. Um, but yeah, so I wanted to kind of get your idea and your thoughts on that, because I would suppose that it's higher in your church, right? But
Hmm. Hmm.
but your church, it might be an outlier. It might be rare for it to be that many people sharing the gospel and winning souls.
It's growing. It's a slow drip. It's a slow drip. Yet it drips. One of the biggest things that I'm seeing is that when when society makes it easy for us to be accepted of what is should be or could be the norm, and we begin to wear and tear up against that every day like a tire runs on the road. You get wear and tear, that tread gets low, right? At some point it's going to become normal, and it becomes accepted. And I think that buffers up against evangelism and truly sharing the gospel, because we now take it personal. We will
Mm,
now say what looks normal has now become a personal thing to me, or it has become personal to my friend or my neighbor. And I don't want to hurt their feelings or offend them or these
yeah,
things. What apologetic teaches, it doesn't teach offense. I was
yeah,
trained, Colorado Christian University, God bless them, rigorous. I was trained to share the gospel with love, grace, and truth, with compassion, compelling men, right? And what I've learned is that you just ask questions. We're trying to explore Socratic method. We're just trying to explore what it is to know what you believe, and let's unveil and get to the truth. And so I think a lot of people just don't know personality conflict and personal resolution and conflict resolution. And I teach all that stuff in my church and how to really get to the root of it, because they don't want to offend people. And you're not offending them. You're not after offense. You're just honestly trying to understand. And if you do that
yeah,
compassionately, I believe you can get to the answer, and we would be more integral or forthright about getting to what it is to love our faith and share our faith.
yeah, yeah. No, that's good, because it can easily go to the other side, right? And I'll share this story, kind of what I was thinking about. So, and in the college that I went to, it's a Bible college. It was kind of like spiritual boot camp, and I needed that because I was a secular battle rapper that was just kind of had no rules, boundaries, or anything, and so it was very strict. And then shortly after starting there, for I think probably 3 years, I was in school for 3 years there. Tuesdays and Thursdays we would go and evangelize for about 4 hours each, and it was part of the grade. But I remember the first time going, I was a new believer. I was like, I don't know what to say, and we were partner up, boy and girl, and I was like, I made my partner do all the stuff. I was like, you talk to them. I'm kind of shy talking to strangers, but then also talking to about Jesus. I don't want to mess it up. I don't know what to say if they have questions. Um, and I remember hating that feeling. I was like, man, this sucks, right?
Yep.
Um, to the point where I went back to Houston for Thanksgiving break, and I went to the local movie theater, and I walked around the circle, like there was a circle area, like I got to talk to at least one person. I got to talk to at least one person, just kind of like trying to pump myself up. And finally, I ended up doing it probably after 30 minutes of doing that, praying, and just I started talking to the one person and just started talking to everybody I could see. And I got so good at it and so comfortable because I talked to so many people for hours every week that I stopped listening to people. right? Like that's what you're talking about. Like I wasn't listening to them because I already knew what they were going to say. I already knew their objections. I already knew their reasons. I already knew that. So even before some of them would finish, I would already answer what they were saying. And even though kind of like you're talking about the war against intellect, I was hitting them in the mind, right? Like, but it wasn't really an intellectual problem.
Yeah.
Most people who reject Jesus, it's not an intellectual problem. It's not because of evidence. It's not because of that. There's something else there for the most part. There's others that it'll be different, but um, I started to see people as projects and not as people.
Mm.
Right? And that's easy to do, and it's not a good thing. But I mean, even my wife, at the time, she was like, or later on when she became my wife, she's like, "Yeah, don't. You're just gonna debate. Don't debate with people because that's not the point of it." And for me, it wasn't the point of it. But I was like, if I can win them over in an argument and I can beat them in a debate, then they'll come to Jesus. And sometimes they would, sometimes they wouldn't. But a lot of them were becoming spiritual orphans because I
Mm.
wasn't discipling,
Yeah.
right? And that's why I love that you have that piece. It's evangelizing, but it's also discipleship.
Yeah.
We're gonna take responsibility over these souls. We're
Yeah.
gonna love them and not create spiritual orphans. So that's important. So I know it can go to the other extreme where you can learn all the arguments and be puffed up. I think that's what Paul's talking about as well
Mm.
in 1 Corinthians 13,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
having all that, even spiritual gifts or whatever it is, and being puffed up. And it's like, but you forget to love.
Mm.
And if you forget to love, then you're just a noisy gong. You're just making noise.
That's real, man. That's real. I teach my church to, it's not about winning the argument. We're not here to win arguments. We're not here to harass people. We're not here to do that. We're here to share our faith with integrity and with truth and with love and compassion, but also compelling them. There is a bit of challenge there. What's the challenge? And we seek to understand. I tell my church all the time, we're not trying to give definitions to things that they have problems with. If they make a statement, if they have a problem, if they throw a word, we're not obligated to define what they feel.
Hmm.
They are obligated to define what they feel and what it is to reject and what it is to accept, because we're integral to the gospel. And if you get wrapped around some of these mindless minuscule conversations, you will lose the very essence of what it is to draw men, because in order to draw, there has to be some level of trust, and that
Yeah.
trust goes into evangelism, and that trust goes into more so discipleship, because evangelism may be a little bit raw, a little edgier, a little first time approach. But at the same way, if you do it like Christ did it, you'll find that people will be willing to at least share what it is to know, or to explore with you what it is to have this conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's definitely good. I think statistically, it's about 5 to 10 years for a Muslim to become a Christian.
Hmm.
And that's a long
Long
time.
time.
And that's a lot
Yeah.
of questions. That's a lot of anger. That's a lot of stuff. And so I'm Mexican, but a lot of people think that I'm Arabic. They're like, oh yeah, you're one of us. And so
You're given that, man. I'm not gonna
yeah, yeah.
lie.
I remember right when I graduated with my bachelor's of in youth ministry and biblical studies, one of my first jobs was working as a valet in Oakland, and I was working with 4 Muslims, and I had all the extremes. One that was just like nominal; he didn't really believe it, but it was kind of the culture. One that was the nicest person in the world. Then one that I was like, this dude's a terrorist, like he's just crazy. And then another one, so you had all these
Yeah.
different personalities, and I was like, man, I got my degree, my bachelor's, I'm gonna win the world. And I was like arguing with them all the time. And then finally God started softening my heart. It's like, they're not even hearing you. You're not even hearing them. But it just became, once we had started having a friendship, an actual friendship, then we had started having good conversations about who God is, and the relationship that he can have with us, versus for them the highest relationship they can have with God is master and slave, right?
Mhm.
And I was like, man, but I'm not. I'm his son. He loves me. And
Yeah.
for them, that's forbidden.
Yeah.
But when they would hear that, they were like, why are you not like these other Christians that I see? Why are you different? What is different about you? And then I was still doing Christian rap. I still do it, but not as much. But I was still doing it there. They're like, why don't you just rap but keep religion out of it? Like, why don't you separate it? And I was like, because it's everything that I am. Like, I just love talking about God. I love being with them. I love reading, and they saw the difference
Yeah.
versus having to do certain things and wanting to do certain things, right? I actually had someone hit me up on Facebook. They're in Ghana, Africa, and he was just asking me questions. He has a Bible study, and he was like, if we tell people about hell, is it going to make them false converts? And so I shared a story about me when I became a Christian, and I was like, yeah, it can be. It's important to warn them, but it's that relationship piece, right? Before I was like, man, I don't want to sin, so God won't send me to hell, and then I kept sinning. I said, man, God's mad at me, he's upset. But then whenever um like I really rededicate my life and God changed my heart, I was like, I don't want to sin because I don't want to break his heart. I don't want to do something that's going to hurt him, right? Like just like a husband with a wife, right? We don't want to betray our spouse, because not just because whatever, but because we love them, we care about their heart, and it's
Mm.
important.
Mm. And what do you think about this? What do you think about the deconstructing Christian? Right. I think that's even a deeper challenge, because I've encountered so many that are deconstructing, right? And
Mm,
I found years ago, when I was still, kind of rough, rigorous, man. My whole discipleship, evangelism thing was really aggressive. I met this dude at the army school that I was at, and me and him were both Pentecostal. And
mm,
I came up in the PAW, Pentecostal Assemblies of the World, Southern Missionary Baptist, and the Full Gospel Baptist, Word of Faith. But the majority of my growth and development was in the Pentecostal Assemblies of the World. And so I met this guy at one of the army schools that I was at. And you know what he said to me that really opened my mind? He grew up Pentecostal, Hispanic guy as well. He grew up Pentecostal. And he was like, man, you don't give Pentecostal. And when I thought about that thing, I said, I know what he's saying.
mm.
I know exactly what he's saying, because our rigor in the Pentecostal faith is extremely disciplined. It's
Yeah,
extremely conservative, and it's so many different things. But the way I wanted to reach him, he was very open, and I just took my time. And that particular he said, because I don't go to church anymore. He said, I grew up with that. He said, but you're a little different. I can talk to you. And I didn't take it as a compromise. I just took it as an approach.
yeah,
And I think that if you look at the method of what we're doing to reach people, and really seek to sincerely understand people, right? You can really get to the foundation and the root of what you spoke to earlier of what it is. And a
mm,
lot of it isn't an intellectual battle. Some of that stuff is just pain, hurt, trauma. Some of that
yeah,
stuff is just misunderstandings, you understand? And everybody has their own viewpoint and stance on that. However, that guy opened me up to being able to reach people that really, in my context, if I'd have led with, I'm in the Pentecostal faith, he kind of would have, I didn't lead with that, but that came up later.
yeah,
But he was already hooked by then.
yeah,
He was already hooked by then. So we rock with it. Then he couldn't let go. That hook was already in the mouth. He couldn't let go then.
yeah,
So that's an interesting thing with the deconstructing faith. Deconstruction has been a very big conversation in a lot of my community, and a lot of people that I connect with, and just those that say, "Hey, I don't fool with church. They're money hungry. Pastors are this, that, and the third." And those are a lot of my conversations, because Birmingham is Bible Belt. Birmingham is Bible Belt. Birmingham ain't Oakland. Birmingham ain't Austin. Birmingham ain't Chicago. Right?
yeah,
Birmingham.
yeah,
Birmingham, because in Chicago they'll go to church and then they go gang banging and selling drugs right after service.
yeah,
I know firsthand. So you got to understand, Birmingham is conservative Bible Belt. So when they say this, you know what I mean. You got to really be able
yeah.
to dig in and get some definition.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And cuz I felt the difference when I went from Houston to California. I didn't feel the difference. When I went from California to Massachusetts, that's when I felt the difference, cuz that's post-Christian. Right? Like they're like, "No, we don't want to hear that." I would open doors for people. I'm from Texas, Southern Hospitality. I opened doors for them. They would go around all the way just to get away from me. Say hi to people at the grocery store. They would just look at me crazy. I was like, "Man, I'm not in Texas anymore." But it was different. But let me read this comment real quick, because I think it's talking about this as well, from Mythos Boy. 20 to 28 to 30. of the U.S. population describes itself as nuns, most of which are fairly called deconstructive Christians. Yes, that's definitely true.
Yeah, yeah,
None, they don't have no religious affiliation. Let me
right.
see. He has some other stuff on here. Um, Most of them don't describe themselves as atheists, however, some so diverse community. Yeah, that's definitely true. You're definitely right, and that's a big question as well, Mr. Percentline. That's all good. You're good. But no, you're right. You're right. A lot of them are deconstructing, and a lot of popular ones as well. And we see some celebrities that are becoming Christians and things like that. So it's a very interesting time.
It is.
Um, I think there was I forget exactly, and I keep saying the word statistic, but there was something online saying that more people are not going to church, but more people are actually reading their Bible.
Hmm.
And so that's a good thing, but it's a bad thing because they're getting their theology from TikTok and Instagram and things like that, or they're reading it in isolation. My biggest pet peeve is reading context. When you read the Bible, you got to read it in context. Context is king, but also the idea, because and not to knock it, but there's a verse of the day, right? People read the verse of the day. I can do all things through Christ. All these amazing scriptures, which are good, but at the same time, without context, we don't even see what it's
Hmm.
actually saying. But that's kind of another thing. So the next question, which goes along with what you were talking about, is: do you believe many young people are leaving the church because their questions weren't answered?
I think that is a portion of it. I really do. Honestly, because of the society that we live in now, social media is always giving us some form of an answer, right? Now, that this is
Mm,
whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent. There
yeah.
is some level of answering questions on these platforms, but then when they go to church, pastor, have this controversial question, taboo. TikTok will answer it, IG will answer it,
Mm,
Facebook will answer it, YouTube will answer it. Guess what? The new
man.
one, AI will answer their question. But they come to Pastor Geno,
Oh
and
man.
I'll say, you need to go and hey, we don't talk about that in Bible study.
Man.
We're not dealing with that. Go sit down. That's not, no, 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 no. And that's the problem I ran up against as a young minister, preacher, disciple, evangelist. I had questions that got shunned, got canned, thrown away because it was too much for the pastor to give to the body. So guess what I do? When
Mm,
I teach, mainly when I teach, Sunday mornings are even interactive, but on Wednesdays, my stuff is engaging and open dialogue. If they cannot get their questions answered from you, pastor, from you, teacher, from you, evangelist, we have multiple platforms that will give them some form of an answer. And guess what? It'll make them happy too. We're
yeah.
not after making them happy, but guess what? They'll seek and find until they find the right one that makes sense or makes them happy or corrects what they thought was right, whatever that looks like in their world.
Yeah.
That's one of the
Yeah.
wrestles.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that that's important, because there's many churches that I go to where even my wife was like, people don't talk about hell that much anymore. That people don't talk about X, Y, and Z because it's controversial, because they don't want to get canceled. I'll read this real quick from Mythos Boy. But yeah, you're right. Chat GPT is actually very impressive. It knows a lot, and it can kind of help a lot in that, as long as you don't make it biased. Because I've seen um
He said not very impressive.
oh, not very impressive. Okay, good.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Well, yeah, it knows a lot, but yeah,
you,
I misread that. Yeah.
yeah, you got to be
Um,
careful.
yeah, for real. Um, but what was I thinking? But along the lines of that, I think it's important for us to be able to answer those questions. Oh, that's what I was gonna say. So I thought it was interesting. I don't know if you ever watched Ruslan, but Ruslan did a small video a few weeks ago where he was saying a lot of non-Christians are actually saying, after reading the Epstein files, they're saying, now I understand why God did what he did in the Old Testament.
Wow.
Right. And
Wow.
that was something interesting, because most of the time we're trying to defend about that. Like, it wasn't this, or we're trying to make it, but they're like, I understand now,
Yeah.
because there's some really, really wicked, terrible
Oh.
things that are happening to people,
Mhm.
and that's not okay.
Mhm.
And And it was just interesting. It's just an interesting observation that he made based off a non-Christian saying, now I see why judgment, right? Because in most of us, we want mercy, we want justice, right? We want to see justice, regardless if you believe, whatever you believe in God or not. Everyone has a sense of justice inside of them. There is a reason, right? Like God is a just God. He's also a merciful God. How does that all play and work out? That's a whole nother, topic for another time. But um, um, I think in this book, it might have been where he was talking about the question that I asked you. We're saying a lot of people, apologetics isn't the end all be all, but if someone is asking a question, and most of the time, they're asking a question, but really that's not the real tipping point that why they don't like God or they don't believe in God or why they left the church. There's something most of the time different or deeper. But if you can kind of help them to see and answer that question, it can open a door where they would kind of go to the next level. Right? Like if someone is asking a question, like my son, he was asking the other day about dinosaurs. What about dinosaurs? What about evolution? And he's only 9, right? And he's like, but it doesn't line up with Genesis 1 and 2. You know what I mean? Like he was asking some questions, and I could just say, oh, the Bible says ignore. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
I was like, okay, let's talk about it. Let's think about it. Let's walk through it. These are good questions, right? Like, and my son, he always has really good questions that kids questions are sometimes harder.
Yeah.
And
Extreme.
so sometimes he's curious, but sometimes it's like we can't just push those questions away,
Mm-mm,
right?
mm-mm.
Which I think a lot of Christians pastors do. Unfortunately, the church does.
Yeah, I think it buffers up against their personality type. It buffers up against the confidence that they have in defending the gospel. I think it buffers up against transparency, pride, transparency being one of the biggest things. Ego. It buffers up against it because it opens up a well of vulnerability, and a pastor has to be able to accept where he is in his own faith, and then he
Hmm.
must also accept and acknowledge where the people are in their faith. But then the two must walk together in order to agree. And so they have to say, listen, I know you're not better than I'm not better than you, but let's reason together. Let's talk
Hmm.
about what it is to explore your faith and get deeper into your walk, and understand that you're not
Yeah.
perfect and you're going to make mistakes. That stuff is exploratory, and that's stuff that I teach, like being able to explore what it is to know that you are a human. God has given you his spirit, yet you wrestle not against flesh and blood, but with principalities. And you have to be able to understand that every day is not going to be a mountaintop victory for you. Like
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Every day you win, the bloodstained banner is going high. No, it's going to be some days you want to throw that bloodstained banner in the sand
Hmm.
and like, nah, this ain't for me. But
Yeah.
that's where discipleship becomes its most strongest metric. Discipleship teaches us how to do life with people, and how the early church did life with the people that they served. It was a community of life-giving people.
Yeah.
And so,
Absolutely.
and I think that one of the biggest things, and I'm going to say this piece real quick, that I love what you said, how you walk your son through that dynamic. I think the reason why a lot of these pastors, or we pastors, or church leaders don't answer questions is because it starts with the family. I think that a lot of
Hmm.
our family dynamic is muffled. It's muffled, it's encapsulated, it's closed off, it's taboo at home. So guess what little Geno learns? Little Geno learns to be quiet, don't ask those questions, and don't even answer those questions, right?
Yeah.
And that becomes the full grown pastor Geno. And a lot of that stuff is family dynamic. And then it bleeds into some of our church construct. That's not always the case, but that is sometimes some of the case. And I think that if we can teach pastors how to be a little bit more transparent, a little bit more vulnerable, and be honest about the imperfection of man versus the righteousness of man, and just
Hmm.
be able to understand where that lines in scripture, I think that we could be a little bit more transparent to the ones that we serve. And Christ said it best. He learned obedience through the things that he suffered. And I think that it's one of those things that, like learning obedience is a hard thing. How to obey God, right? It's not
Yeah.
always
Yeah.
easier
Yeah.
said than done. Obey the Lord. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. No, that's definitely true, and I think that's something that I was thinking about too, because a lot of people are afraid to actually voice out the doubts that they may be having. And I said this to Fanatic as well because I told him he had a conversation with somebody else before he had me on his live, and then when he had me on his live, we had a really good conversation, right? We were talking about a little bit of Christian rap, we were talking about
I know
church,
you
we were
were on
talking
this
about
line.
yeah, and so
Wow.
I was telling him if he would have had conversations like this, I don't think he would have left the faith because he was real and honest with where he was and his struggles, right? And I think that a lot of us, especially if we're in leadership, we don't want to talk about our struggles either because people keep us on a pedestal and they're going to look at us different and things like that. But even like when we're suffering, in seminary I took a class on the Odyssey, God and human suffering, and we read the book of Job, and in there you notice that his friends start like coming at him, and he's like, I'm already suffering, things suck right now, I feel like God's against me, and then my best friend, instead of helping me, they're coming at me too, right? And sometimes we do that as Christians, where when someone's suffering, we're like, okay, it's been 2 weeks, I know that your son died, but get over it.
Mm,
And that's how we make them feel. And then same thing with this. Well, we're talking about evolution, we're talking
yeah.
about whatever, and we're like,
Mhm.
okay, yeah, get over it, that's not true. And then we kind of ostracize and clicks and kick people out, and it's like, it's no wonder people don't want to voice what they're suffering or they're struggling with. And we need to, like you said, we need to be more honest, and we need to have a better way of doing that. We need
Mhm.
to and a lot of it is fear, right? Like if a person is not equipped to talk to those things, instead of saying I don't know, right? Sometimes we think pastors are the know-it-all. They're not. they're
No.
they're people just like us, and Jesus never fails even when people fail. But we need to understand, like, sometimes they don't know, and that's okay. Not knowing is okay. I think that's something I try to teach people when they're doing apologetics evangel, like, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah,
an okay answer,
yeah.
right? Because I used to be the know-it-all, so now I'm like, it's okay. Okay not to know.
Listen, it's
um
okay not to know. You know what I mean? It is.
yeah,
It shows a very honest lens about humanity. I
yeah,
mean, and it's so many different things we can say with that because we're humans. We could be prideful, we could be arrogant, we could be patient, we could be so many different things. And when you think about how Christ approached the human condition, with so much grace, man, with love and truth and rebuke. He was just so dynamic and delivering, things in the right season and in the right time in the right moment. And I think that if we would just humble ourselves and lean back a little bit and say, I don't have to have the answer to that. There is only one perfect, there is only one all knowing. You know what I
yeah,
mean? And we just die down a little bit. I think people will be able to see a real Christ with the dying of human self. They'll say,
yeah.
man, this dude is not as arrogant as I thought. You could be perceived as just arrogant and know it all and all of this other stuff. Man, you go in there and be humble, man. That's why I think I failed so many tests growing up, man. I had a 2.5 grade point average in high school. I mean, I graduated with 3 credits. I mean, I was on the skin of my teeth, man, graduate. I was on the skin of my teeth, man, ditching I'm just out of class, smoking weed, hanging out, just doing fun stuff at the sake of and I failed a lot of written exams growing up, man.
Mm,
I didn't have it. I didn't have it like my kids got it, right?
yeah,
Um, and I look at that and it is like a thorn in my side, like Paul says, right? And that thing is there buffering me every time I go up against intellect, every time I go up against the well studied, every time I go up against the well learned. God keeps that thorn in
that's
my
good.
side. And I'm always reminded, no matter how much information you know, no matter how many victories you've won, no matter how many
Mm,
times you've charged the hill and taken it, you die to self so that I can be exalted. When you do that,
mm,
you're really upward here. You're really going to win that battle. And I'm after the soul. I'm not after the win. I'm just
yeah.
want to see the soul reconstructed.
Mm. Yeah, no, that's a good point. I remember when I was in seminary, I saw Dinesh D'Souza versus Bart Ehrman, and I thought, I mean, seeing it in person, I felt like Dinesh D'Souza did a really, really great job
Yeah.
in his arguments and things like that, and the way that they format it. Um, and then we talked about it, I think, the next day in class, and a lot of the other students were saying they thought Bart Ehrman won, And I was like, how did, like, were y'all even watching the same debate? And the reason they were saying is because they thought that Dinesh D'Souza made it too much intellectualized. He
Mhm.
intellectualized the conversation, which is a very personal, God and human suffering theodicy
Yep.
question. But they felt like he and actually that was the words that Bart Ehrman actually used, was that you're intellectualizing the question. He's like, well, this is a debate, they were kind of bantering, going back and forth, but that idea. And so even in the midst of that, because I got to talk to Bart Ehrman for like 30 minutes after,
Wow.
and so one of my friends was saying, we were talking about the idea is like, you can win the battle and lose the war, right?
That's right,
You
man.
can win the battle and lose the soul,
Right. That's right.
and the soul is more important. The
It is.
soul is more important. And I was like, dang, I didn't even think about it like that. So we were just kind of like reflecting on what's actually important here, right? Um, Let me
And I think,
see.
oh, go
Oh, I
ahead.
was just reading these comments.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Go
Oh, no, you're good. He was just laughing. But
ahead.
yeah. Let's see. There was in online aligned with this. What's the danger of emphasizing love without truth, and vice versa, truth without love? But then, what does speaking of love and truth look like in conversations?
Mhm. Man, love without truth, it really lacks, it really devalues, let me say that. It
Mm,
devalues the individual. It's really me devaluing you, because if I love you, here's a good analogy. Grooming. If you want to take care of yourself, be presentable as a son to a father, father to a son, you're going to make sure that they're groomed. You're going to make sure their hair is cut, your beard is lined, cut. It's going to be well taken care of. But the issue is, when the razor hits the skin, it don't always feel good, right?
mm,
Sometimes you're pulling hairs. Sometimes for us African American black men, we have ingrowns, but that doesn't take away from us grooming ourselves. There must be a grooming, though, that there is an ingrown. Right. We just got to know how to get the ingrown and pluck it, and we got to get under that skin and do a little
mm,
bit of extra work. So it devalues. So the answer would be, let's stop cutting hair then.
mm,
If it's that painful. No, 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 no. Grooming is necessary. Grooming is necessary. The same thing with love and truth. Love is necessary just as much as truth is. We devalue people when we take away the truth. We're saying that you don't deserve to understand what it is to be loved on both, because Christ said it, chasteneth them that he loved. He chastises them that they love. But the world, they don't understand that. What I'm saying is that instead of you going out into the street and living a life of crime, or living a life dangerous and recklessly, I want to keep you protected. But sometimes you may have to experience some of those things in order to be curved. And so what I'm saying is that love needs truth. The
mm,
two are married. It's a grooming element. Love and truth grooms us because it's presentation, but it's also the cut. And the cut is not always the best. And just think about it. At the end of it, you love it. In the midst of it, it may be a little bit painful. Love and truth goes together in my book, because we devalue what it is to be presented in the right light.
yeah. Yeah, no, 100%. And I think right now that's what we see a lot of, right? Like a lot of churches are more on the love but not the truth. Or some people, especially on Facebook, they're all about the truth but not the love. And they are married together. They have to be.
They have to be.
Um I mean, that's what Jesus said to do, but they have to be, because you can say something loving in an unloving way, and it'll miss the whole point, right? Like that person won't receive it and grow from it and learn from it, because they shut it down, they just ignored it. um
Mhm.
let's see. What are some of the questions that you have dealt with, like the hardest questions maybe somebody brought up to you,
Mhm.
or like apologetically speaking, that you're like, man, this is a really good question, I gotta wrestle with, or or even personally, just things that you have experienced that you're like, man, these are some good questions, or the strongest question against Christianity, or however you want to answer that.
I'm gonna be honest. A lot of what I've encountered face to face has not been that challenging. And I'm gonna just be honest with you. My biggest
Yeah.
challenge has been doing my when I went to school. We had to defend against homosexuality, and we had to write papers playing both sides, both the Christian and the same sex lover. We had to defend and write and argue against ourselves. Abortion,
Mm.
those type of controversy. I took a class called controversial. Was it controversial conversations or something? I forgot the name of the class, but we did everything from immigration. Why that is wrong, and why against going against immigration or being against the immigrant is not pleasing to the eyesight of God. And we had to walk through that. And those things were new to me. Those things were new to me, defending the faith against. And so, though I have my own personal view on immigration, or not immigration so much, but so much on abortion and same sex, I have my own biblical truth with those things I've never had to defend up against both ends. And so it is always something new to learn when you're talking to someone on either category, whether it be homosexuality, whether it be abortion, life, what is life, where does it begin? And those are some of the most challenging, and it only because there is a level, and people like to pull it out, but you can't disallow science. Science is a bedrock, and it doesn't trump God. It actually supports his argument. And when we look at scripture and we look at science and we look at philosophy, right? All of those historical constructs, because science was built off of philosophy. So you got to go back to philosophy. Philosophy, people go, oh, that's not a real. Well, we built a lot of what we studied and what we put into practice now off of philosophical arguments, and a lot of those constructs were developed. And so those have been two of the most challenging pieces, and those weren't with people.
Mm.
With people, some of the most common things that I see is deconstruction. I'm not going to church anymore because of this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
That's some of my most common arguments, or interactions. But quite honestly, my most recent have been church people that have been hurting other church people.
Mm.
Right? They'll say, well, the Trinity versus the oneness, and this versus that. Once saved, always saved versus not. Those are some of the things that I've honestly been up against the most recently, because we have to safeguard the faith. And if the Christians are fighting each other, come on, man, who's going to believe what we say?
Yeah.
We're deconstructing from the inside. It's almost like Rome. Rome fell from the inside out.
Yeah.
Right? Largest empire in the world fell from the inside out. And we cannot allow the faith, right? And God won't either, to be that type of metric that people say, man, those guys always fighting each other.
Yeah.
Who believes a good marriage when you always see domestic disputes on the news? There's no
That's a
marriage.
good point.
You always see a couple out. I always see a couple out in the street fighting. That ain't no healthy marriage in their eyes. But they're married though, right? Yeah, they are. They're legally married, but they're always fighting. So same thing. If they always see the church fight, who are married to the church, married to Christ, that's not believable.
Yeah.
So I found my biggest arguments against like your fanatic kind of thing, but mainly with other church people, religion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's honestly, I've talked to, discussed, debated with a lot of people, Mormons, Jehovah Witness, Muslim, atheists, and it's always the hardest is against the Christian, because they use the scriptures and they twist it and all kinds of stuff, and I'm like, man, that's not what it says or what it means. But yeah, we got to do better. We got to do better at loving one another. That's how they know we're disciples.
That's how we know. That's how they know, man. That's how they know. Some of the most common conversations that my church bring to me is just stuff off Instagram and TikTok. And some of it is just from unlearned spaces. And I think that if we just take the time to be patient enough to say, hey, how did you come to that conclusion? What do you mean by that? Just asking those type of questions and exploring a little bit, you'll get to the root of it. And but that takes patience. That takes patience. And it takes a loving, kind heart. It takes somebody that really is concerned about your soul, versus winning that argument or winning that space over. And so I've had people just stop talking to me because I've asked so many questions. And some people take questions as it's problematic, like I'm trying to argue. I'm just asking a question. But our culture has it's if you're asking a question, that means you don't agree with me. Well, listen, I'm just trying to understand, my friend.
Yeah.
Help me understand,
Yeah.
Steve. Help me understand your framework. Oh, you just don't like what I'm saying. I never said that.
Yeah.
I want to explore this a little bit.
Yeah. No, and that's true in general, because so the book, the whole book, the premise of the lazy approach to evangelism is the lazy approach is start asking questions, because a lot of atheists or others will put us on the defense, right?
Yeah.
Right. And we fall for it, because they'll ask us, well, we got to prove this and we have to prove that and we have to prove that.
No.
All they're doing is saying, how? I don't believe it. Give me evidence. And
Yeah.
while we're like, kind of like, okay, give you this evidence, I give you this reason,
Yeah.
give you this.
Yeah.
And, but questions are absolutely important. Jesus asked many questions. And obviously we know he had good reasons for it. We weren't just asking for the sake of asking, as some can do.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, asking for the sake of wanting to know and wanting to grow. And some people do get defensive because they don't really have a real reason, right?
They
They
don't.
don't have a real reason for what they believe or what they think. They just heard it somewhere and it sounds good. I have a video that I was talking about zeitgeist and certain things about, because there's a lot of falsehoods going around about Jesus. He was like Mithras. He was like this God. He was like that God. They had 12 disciples just like Jesus. And he was born on the 25th and all this stuff. And it's like, none of that's actually accurate. None of it's actually true.
It's not.
No one's even done the research to say it, but someone said it so long ago and it was a documentary. So it must be true.
Yeah.
But if
Ha-
you actually look it up, it's actually not true. There's no scripture. There's no evidence at all of any of that being true.
Evidence, not none, zero. How about the European Jesus that we know of?
Oh man,
Uh,
I had a
that,
discussion about that too. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that man. I mean,
And
even. Oh, go
yeah, I
ahead.
had the opposite too, where he was African because his hair was wool, or like wool is what they said. And
Mm,
it's like, well, read Revelation because it clears it up a little bit. And it's like,
it
nah, but
does.
his feet were bronze. It's like, yeah, but his head was white and his body was jasper. It's like, nah, don't we ignore that part?
Man, it's so real, man. You start looking at that, and you start looking at the geology. You start looking at all of those things and putting the pieces together. You start saying, "Man, I've been lied to," in a lot of
Yeah,
cases, and a lot of people deconstruct because they feel that Christianity has lied to them or didn't present itself in the right light. And once, if they'd have just dug a little deeper and just allowed God to really minister to them, man, they'd have found a new love for the faith.
yeah,
And then having the right community around you as well. You got to think about it. Philly and the East Coast, up there in that Northeast, where you were in Massachusetts, man, that's a highly intellectual region, man. They're all about thought. They're all
mm,
about that. I mean, I know dudes in the Army from Philly, and all of them, man, they all got that bam, 5 percenters and different other thought groups. And they really wrestle with the intellect of everything. And so you have to really be able to know the region and what you're up against and how to really manage those
yeah.
moments. You don't just go in the ring and fight Mike Tyson without studying the tapes. Who does that? You got to
That's
study
good.
the
Yeah.
tapes. Alabama don't play Auburn without studying the tapes.
Mm,
You got to study the tapes. And
yeah.
so when you go into the ring, you know what you're up against.
Yeah, no, amen. And so I would say this and then kind of get some of your tips. And then if anybody has any
Okay.
questions, I know we got a few people on. I appreciate you, Mythos Boy, for commenting, and others as well. Um, as you were talking about that, because I remember when I went to New York for the first time, I saw the Hebrew Israelites out there, and I was listening to them. I was like, "Who are these guys? Like, what are they talking about?" And so then they started to tell me, because I'm Mexican, I'm one of the chosen, or the 12
Yeah.
tribes and all this stuff.
Hmm.
I think right now it's coming down a little bit, but I think right now, because of the way things are going, it's important for us not to put our race and ethnicity above the gospel and above the Bible, right? Because that's what they were trying to say. Because of my ethnicity, I'm in. The white guy is the devil. The white man is the devil. So he can't be part of the kingdom and all this stuff. but I see it in, whether it's Black Lives Matter or it's Black Hebrew Israelites or what name you, right? Sometimes we can move into those things because we feel and we see there's a lot of injustice. So then people move to those things, the Black Islam, Nation of Islam, and things like that, right? Like, so we can get taken to those things, or even white nationalism, right? That we see as well because of things that, and we think that that's Christianity. And I was like, man, this is not, this is not Christianity. This is not what he said. You're
Yeah,
citizens of heaven first, right?
yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah,
Yeah, it's a battle of the book. Whose book is better? Whose book is stronger? And I think, though the black, or they don't like to be called Black Hebrew Israelites. They like to be called Hebrew Israelites.
and
So
this Hebrew Israelites.
the Hebrew Israelites, right? They will argue from the Old Testament context, and they will say, even to your point, that the Native American context, or all of the other tribes of Israel. And it's become, I've seen arguments online where they were Native American Christians that argued against their stance, and they
Mm.
still tried to persuade the Native American who
Yeah,
isn't part of the 12 tribe. And so there are some people that the Bible talks about, some of those foolish conversations that you don't even need to be a part of. And though we don't come out and say that that's foolish up front, what we do need to understand is that some of those arguments don't have their waste of time, and they are still problematic to the Christian faith. So we
yeah,
must approach them with wisdom, love, truth, and study. A
yeah,
lot of them are aggressive. They're aggressive. And so
yeah. Very aggressive.
if you're aggressive, it ain't gonna work. You know what I mean? It
Yeah.
ain't gonna work, man. So it gotta be something. We gotta be very strategic when we're approaching those specialty groups like that, and understand. And they will rarely go one on one. They would rarely do that, and I've even encountered. I wanted to approach it one on one, but they won't do it. They won't do it, and it's unfortunate because we're trying to say that you believe what you believe, and I do too. But this is now a bar fight, is what you're
Mm.
telling me. This is a bar fight. This is a street match. This is
Yeah,
not. It's not a. This is not Mike Tyson and Evander Holyfield, right?
yeah.
Where two men can get in the ring and spar or fight. And I don't mean that in a spiritual, I don't mean I'm fighting
I
them,
know
but
what
I
you mean.
mean that
Yeah,
in a whole analogy sense, that we can get in the ring and it's just you and I. This is not the Royal Rumble, right? Where everybody get to jump in and do what they need to do what are we
yeah,
doing? Like, where nobody wins.
yeah.
And it's not that we're after, but we're just trying to say that there is no, where can Christ get the glory
Mm.
out of something of that caliber? And it gets reckless.
Yeah. All right. So what are some tips for other pastors, but then also for in general, for people to get, whether to be sharpened? Because as you start thinking about apologetic, it's huge, right? Because we're going
It's
to study all religions. We're going to study, the resurrection and the proof and all. Like, there's so many different things that you can go to. But what would you give to somebody who's like, all right, I understand that we need to be, I want to be more prepared. How do I do it? Then also, maybe later, just the idea of pastors like, hey, this is how I've done it with my church, and this is what's been effective. Obviously, not every church is going to be the same, but it has
yeah.
to go from not just the pastor doing all the work and not just the people bringing people to church so that the pastor can preach to them, right? Like, that's not the goal of everything. But some churches are like that, where they think that's the goal. Pastor is, the quarterback, and I just kind of bring people to him. But
Yeah, we got to train people. And that's what I'm big on in my church now, training them up to be disciples of Christ and giving them real world experiences, and give a lot of my experiences and educate them. The first thing I would say is to start with transparency of who you are, allowing them to understand the man that's preaching the gospel to them. If you are the pastor of the church, that means that your voice is going to probably be the loudest, not in a yelling sense, but the most heard voice in that church. So it's important for us as pastors to be able to deliver and them understand our philosophy of pastoring. What is my building block of pastoring? The first thing that I lead with is transparency, being honest about who I am, what I do, and walk them through that process. This is what transparency looks like to me in humanity, and this is what it looks like according to the gospel. This is what it looks like here, and being able to educate them on that, leading them into grace, leading them into truth. You never leave either one of those out. You walk that line together. Transparency, grace, love, and truth. Almost soteriology. Redemption, grace, salvation. You glorification. You're walking them through like a soteriology type of experience, but you have to give them a framework of things that you will not move on. These are things that are a must have. The first one for me in my church is being transparent and honest about who I am, and about how I lead, and about how I was raised, and about all of those flaws and some of those things that were very beneficial to my faith, and some of the things that were problematic to my faith. And I build my lessons around real life experiences that I have, but also that Scripture has given to us. But I think that we have to just a little bit, just drop the haughtiness, if there is haughtiness, and be able to reach the people with the 5 loaves, with the fishes and 5 loaves. We've got to be able to minister to them where they are and give them the level of Christ where they can stomach it, but then also give them some depth for those that can handle it as well. But the body of Christ has to start with transparency. We've got to start with the honesty of who we are and what the gospel teaches, and then allow it to be a mirror to us. That's some of my starting points as it relates to like apologetics and discipleship. I mean, I have a broad stroke on that. I teach it every Wednesday. I mean, I got PowerPoints. If some of my people are on here now, I don't know. But I mean, I have 130 some slides right now, and
Wow.
it's growing, of nothing but discipleship, evangelism, and apologetics. They get it straight from my experience. They get it straight from the schoolhouse, from what I was taught. And then they get it from my guy, Norman Geisler, from who taught me. I give them like a mixture of all of that stuff. And but I give it to them on their level, and I teach them basics and tactics that everyday use. You can use this every single day of your life. So it's a broad stroke for me, but the starting point overall is transparency, and then that salvation, truth, redemption, grace, all of that.
Amen. Amen. So, is there anything else that you kind of want to say on this topic? Maybe I haven't asked a question. I know we're over our time, but I appreciate
Oh,
you
good.
sticking around.
Yeah,
We could definitely talk about this all night. But
yeah.
anything that you would love to share, kind of share your heart, or something that you, um, maybe something that you wish that you learned early on. I know mine was, um, don't win the battle and lose the war type stuff. But
That's a good one too, man. Early on, man, religion kills, man.
mm,
Religion sucks the life out of God-given growth and spiritual growth as it relates to Christ. One thing that I really wrestled with for 14 years was being in a church that really sucked the God-given Christ out of me.
wow,
They taught me systems, their systems. They taught me their protocol. They taught me their words. They taught me how to dress. They taught me how to preach. They
wow,
taught me how to teach. They taught me how to, lead. And if I didn't do it the way they taught me, I was wrong.
wow,
And so the liberties of Christ I didn't get to experience until after 14 years of serving faithfully in one church, faithfully committed, because I was committed to God. And that's the one thing that I would warn people of not being. One of the quickest ways to lose your Christ-like identity is to get sucked and locked into a religious system, a system that doesn't produce fruit,
mm,
but it produces bad habits, and it produces a system of human acceptance.
mm,
And not God-given acceptance. So a lot of people don't really understand God-given acceptance if they have yet to experience what God is and who he is in a day-to-day format. So that's one thing that I would warn people of. As if you're trying to grow, please be sensitive to where you plant your tent, where you pitch your tent, and where you plant your flag. And say, I want to stick to this church. Ensure that they're teaching and preaching the gospel, love, grace, and truth, redemption, all of those things. in the freedoms of Christ, but also with a truth bearing message undertone that keeps you locked into his love, into his grace. Nothing to scare you, all to keep you encouraged to keep going in the faith. And they have a discipleship program, an evangelism program, and we are probably my church has an apologetics program. So
Hmm. Yeah.
I would hope that a lot of churches are getting to that now, but I'm deploying my apologetics program throughout the city once it's finalized. I'm deploying that thing throughout the city of Birmingham. So,
Yeah, that's gonna be amazing.
yeah, yeah.
Let's
So,
see. Fruit metaphors. Yep, fruit metaphors. Um, so yeah, I mean, I definitely appreciate your time on here. I was just
thank
kind of
you.
thinking, yeah, yeah, no, I appreciate your insights, and I definitely love what you're doing out there because I don't hear many churches, that especially not the pastor, right? They might have a ministry that does apologetics, but not. It's rare to have an actual pastor that's saying, "No, this is who we are. This is our heart. Evangelism is important. Discipleship is important." Actually, I'm thinking about it. I don't know many churches that even have discipleship as their importance. Like, and
I
I'm
was,
not trying to cap, to be
I
honest,
know.
you know, but that was one of the questions that I wrote down. Like, if this was the early church, what would they have emphasized? Right,
Oh
breaking
man.
the bread, community,
Yep.
discipleship,
Yep.
reading the word together.
Yep.
And honestly, I know churches where they're like, well, we're not gonna have our prayer groups. We're gonna have this ministry, but our prayer group, we're not gonna have our intercession team because I don't know, it's just not as important. And it's
Man.
no one's not going. There's people that don't go to that, but they go to this event. And it's just, I mean, the church, we got a lot to work on.
We do. And honestly, you have to ask yourself, and I know we got to break camp, but you got to ask yourself as the pastor, like, what do I believe in? Like, do I really believe the Bible? And do I really believe in putting the Bible into practice? Because, and I'm going to be honest with you about this, some pastors' background isn't such like ours. We have a very urban, contemporary, connected to culture and Christ background, like giving the
That's true.
gospel to people to where they are. So we kind of lean in there very easily. But there's a lot of pastors, if for lack of a better phrase, that are silver spoon pastors that are lineage
Mm.
pastors, some that are not, but
That's true.
they've been given a church and they they don't know what it is to plant one. I mean, I've dealt with three church plants, me building from the ground up, and I know what it is to go and do. But there are some pastors that do not, and so I don't think that a lot of us see the value, especially from a black pastor context. Man, there's few far and in between of us that are really
Yep.
talking discipleship, evangelism, and apologetics. I'm looking for the pastor now, and they love this church. They preach good gospel, all of the things. But I say, hey, do you, some of their saints I've met at my church. I said, you guys got a discipleship? No, we don't really have a discipleship. I'm like, well, evangelism? No evangelism. And I know not to ask about apologetics, but sometimes I do. But I know not to ask that because that's very so the pastor is the lead, man. I mean, yeah, I can assign, I say, hey, you go to my church, Stephen. Hey, I want you over discipleship. Yeah, that can work too. Because Stephen will take it by the reins and but I gotta believe in it first.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I gotta believe in it
Yeah.
first.
Yeah, we'll keep in contact for sure because so the kids pastor, actually, she does a great job at our church because she takes the kids and they evangelize every holiday, and they're first grade through fifth grade.
Wow.
My kids are on there and they've been there about 3 years, and since my kids are 11 now and 9, so 3 years ago, every for Valentine's Day they have like a little cupcake or something, and then they go and they give it to the college students. We're right by a university, and they say, here's a gift. Jesus love you. Can I pray for you? And they're out
Wow.
there doing it. And so it's
Wow.
amazing to see. But she just asked me actually yesterday because she saw the post about us going live. She's like, I think I want to teach them apologetics. And like, can you help me with that? Right.
Yeah.
And I 2 years ago I took them out. I have a little speaker. I took them out and I taught them how to street preach. They all street preach, and they, I did some rap on there, and we just do it. And the kids are like, let's go. I want to have fun. It was their vacation Bible school. But
Yep.
yeah, I'll get with you because I don't
Yep.
have anything prepared, but
Okay.
she wants to start teaching them apologetics. And so I know it in my head, but I don't have it all laid out
I
like your
got you,
137
man.
slide
And growing. I got
and
you.
growing. Yeah.
From the kids on up, we institute all three metrics in our Sunday schools.
Wow.
Discipleship, evangelism. They learn it on their level. I'm
That's
serious
amazing.
about it. I'm
That's
serious about
amazing.
like financial literacy. I teach it on all levels, from kindergarten all the way up to senior citizens. I do the same thing with discipleship, evangelism, and apologetics on their level.
That's amazing.
Yes, sir. Thank you,
Yeah.
sir. Let's do it, man. I'm with you.
Yes, sir. Yeah. So again, I appreciate your time. I'm excited. Yeah. I mean, as much as you have time, I would definitely love to do some more of these. We could
Yep.
talk about finances, the church, and all
I'm
that
with
good
it.
stuff. Um, but yeah, so for everyone, if y'all have any other questions, y'all can put them in the chat. For the next time when y'all gonna see this, we're gonna be gone. But if you have any questions for Pastor Geno, I would definitely relay that as well. I appreciate y'all staying on here, rocking with us, and until next time, peace.
Peace.